A sheet of thick paper in 1/1 format is a large sheet, suitable for detailed work. I fix it on the work table or easel so that the sheet does not shift while working. Before I start sketching figures, I determine the vanishing point and the main lines of perspective. This is especially important for scenes where the space is visible, like in these two final shots, kitchen, table, windows. With light movements of the HB2 pencil, I begin to build the composition. Walls, table, windows, everything that creates the architecture of the scene. At this stage, I do not go into details. It is important to accurately capture the proportions and perspective. Next, I start with a sketch of the oval of the head. Draw an axial line, mark the spine, shoulders, and legs. This gives the figure the correct posture and position in space. Only then do I add details: hands, face, clothes. After the person, I add objects with which he interacts. For example, a glass, a menu, bottles, everything that is on the table. Each shape is checked for perspective. I move on to refining the lines. I outline important elements, emphasize the edges to create a sense of depth. I use hatching to separate the near and far planes. The stage before the final drawing. All the elements are in place, but the figure is still without a face and small details. Volume is conveyed by the arrangement of the figures in perspective. Face, hair, menu, shadows. Everything is ready for coloring. The work began with the selection of the base, a thick sheet of paper of 1/1 format, capable of withstanding several layers of acrylic paint without warping or blurring. The surface was pre-ironed and fixed on the work table to avoid deformation during drying. The first stage was the applied first layer of acrylic. The backgrounds are covered with dark and brown shades to create a contrast with the central figure. The asphalt is done in rich black with small white and gray highlights, which adds a feeling of dampness or evening light. Light areas, the sidewalk and the area in front of the girl, are painted in beige and sand tones with light accents of pink and silver to emphasize the play of light. Particular attention is paid to the girl's figure. Her skin is done in light shades, which gives the image a slightly surreal look. The hair is orange-yellow, with clear contour strokes emphasizing the texture and volume. The clothes are worked on separately. A bright turquoise t-shirt with a cartoon character on the chest is made using the flat color application technique, and then outlined with a black contour line for expressiveness. Small shadows are added along the folds to emphasize the shape of the body. The work on the drink in the girl's hands was a special pleasure. A play of light and shadow and a combination of orange with red splashes were used. The transparency of the glass is imitated using a translucent layer of white paint. Objects in the background, bottles, a glass, a strip of paper, and a book, are painted with short, confident strokes. They do not overload the composition, but create a feeling of everyday comfort and realism of the scene. In conclusion, the entire work is outlined with a thin brush along the edges of the main elements to enhance the feeling of graphic quality and give the picture the character of an illustration. The picture turned out to be lively, emotional, with a slight note of childish naivety and fairy tale. Critical analysis of acrylic painting on thick paper, general impression and style. The painting is done in a naive, slightly surreal manner, with elements of illustration. Here you can feel the influence of children's drawings, but with attempts at conscious artistic construction of the composition and semantic accents. This style is close to the direction of art brut, or naive art, which values emotional expressiveness and sincerity rather than academic accuracy. The figure of the girl, the central object, is visually highlighted due to the saturation of color and contrast with the background. The character seems to belong to another dimension. Her skin, simple shapes, and a cartoon character on the t-shirt give the image both childish spontaneity and mystical intonation. What worked? Color scheme. Contrasts are well chosen. The bright figure of the girl against the background of duller and more neutral tones. Orange hair and a turquoise t-shirt visually pull the viewer to the center. Emotionality. The painting is interesting due to the unusual expression on the girl's face, her position, and the surrounding environment. The viewer wants to figure out what is happening. The scene looks ordinary, but is presented at an angle that creates the feeling of a dream. Composition. The inclined perspective and diagonal composition create dynamics. The viewer seems to be peeping at what is happening from above, an interesting angle. Contour and texture. The outline of the figures and objects creates the effect of a living comic book, which goes well with the naive style. Some areas of the background are made with texture, adding depth. This is especially noticeable on the dark path and tiles. What can be improved? Proportions and anatomy. The girl's arm is too long and unnaturally bent at the elbow. Also, the left leg is extended at an angle, which visually upsets the balance of the figure. This can be corrected by slightly changing the tilt of the body or the position of the hand, preserving expressiveness, but enhancing anatomical readability, background, and perspective. While the diagonal angle creates the illusion of movement, the boundaries between surfaces don't always make sense. Some lines converge incorrectly, throwing off perspective. A stronger horizon line or shadows could be added to emphasize depth. Small objects on the table. The bottles and glass on the right look a little off from the rest of the space. They seem to be hanging from the surface rather than standing on it. Adding subtle shadows or highlights underneath them would help set them in place. Texture and brushwork. In some areas, especially on the character's skin, The paint is light, almost transparent, causing the paper to show through. This isn't always appropriate. A thicker layer of acrylic or an additional pass could improve the visual saturation. This painting might be of interest to fans of naive and surreal art, viewers with an interpretive streak who enjoy deciphering symbols and hidden plots, children's galleries or art spaces, where the artist's individuality and emotional openness are emphasized, people working with children, as an illustration of the child's inner world through the eyes of an adult artist. Conclusion. The work has an expressive character and emotional richness. The artist boldly uses color, perspective, and naive expressiveness, which creates an individual style. With technical refinement, especially in the field of perspective, anatomy, and textures, the picture can acquire even greater artistic value. It already captivates the viewer with its strange, slightly absurd atmosphere, which means it has the potential for development within the author's direction.